ஏய் ஏன்டா இப்படி பண்ற? 76ஆ?
இல்ல சீக்கிரம் முடிஞ்சிரும். Okay, we'll start the class. Disorders of muscle. So coming to the symptoms of muscle disease, it could be weakness, pain, limpiness or stiffness, muscle spasm, cramps, twitching, some mass in the muscle or change in muscle volume like atrophy, hypertrophy, etc. So something which we all know, approach to weakness. Before going to true weakness as such, there are a few things called as pseudo weakness or pseudo paralysis, which should be differentiated from true weakness. Causes of pseudo paralysis include asthenia, which is commonly told by the patients as tiredness or lack of energy. How to differentiate asthenia from true weakness is patient will have normal power in asthenia. What is fatigue is inability to sustain force. We all know myasthenia gravis and other neuromuscular junction disorders. Patient will have normal power initially, but with further action, the power decreases. That is called as fatigue. It also occurs in glycolytic diseases of the muscle. We have something called as pain paralysis or analgesic paralysis. Pain itself will cause reduction in power. So all these are causes of pseudo paralysis. Coming to true weakness as such, if the patient is having difficulty in walking, climbing stairs, getting up, etc., we call it as true weakness. It could be UMN lesion or LMN lesion. This thing which we know, UMN presents with spasticity, hyperreflexia, no fasciculations. Whereas lower motor neuron type of paralysis, patient has pronounced atrophy, flaccidity, hypertonia, normal type of plantar reflex, fasciculations, and hyporeflexia. So LMN lesions can occur due to lesions of the following structures: anterior horn cells, nerve root, nerve, neuromuscular junction or muscle. That is from the anterior horn cells or spinal cord till the end of the muscle, the problem can be of LMN type. So how to differentiate each of this is, we have a specific clinical clue for each. For example, a disease of the motor neuron is called as a motor neuron disease. Example, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Here there will be mixture of UMN and LMN findings. Like patient will be having fasciculations suggestive of LMN lesion, and the patient will have plantar extensors suggestive of UMN lesion. Radiculopathy, now root is involved. The common example which we see is GBS, and still more practical example will be cervical radiculopathy. Neuropathy commonly we see is diabetic neuropathy. So the common feature of both radiculopathy and neuropathy is, apart from motor symptoms or weakness, we have both sensory symptoms and autonomic symptoms. And in neuropathy and radiculopathy, motor weakness will be distal, because we all know Wallerian degeneration. Once a nerve is gone, the distal part is affected more than the proximal part. That's why you have a distal weakness in radiculopathy and neuropathy. And coming to the last two entities, neuromuscular junction disorder like myasthenia gravis or myopathy, which we are going to discuss further, where there will be no sensory symptoms or autonomic system, only pure muscle will be involved. In neuromuscular junction disorder, we'll be having a fluctuating fatigable weakness. Myopathy, the pattern will vary, which we'll discuss shortly. So again, the classical slide, which we know the difference between a neuropathy and myopathy. Differentiating these two is important because both are causes of LMN type of weakness. In neuropathy, associated sensory symptoms like tingling, other sensory symptoms, autonomic involvement may be present, whereas in myopathy, they will be absent. Similarly, deep reflexes will be diminished or absent in neuropathy, whereas they will be normal in myopathy, because deep tendon reflexes are mainly neurologically mediated. So once we have characterized that the weakness is lower motor neuron type of weakness, and we know it is myopathic weakness, we have to ask a few questions to ourselves. Whether the weakness is acute or chronic. If it is chronic, whether it is intermittent or progressive, and we should know the specific pattern of involvement and a specific clinical clue for each thing should be addressed. So summarizing, this will be the final, this will be the total focus of today's class. There are totally 8 causes of myopathy. In order, there will be inherited myopathy. So what is the classical clinical feature and what lab test to do? In inherited myopathy, as we know, it is a progressive disorder starting from childhood till death. The specific lab test for any myopathy in that sense will be serum creatine kinase level, EMG, biopsy, and genetic studies. There's an entity called as disorder of muscle energy metabolism. We all know either fatty acid or glucose is needed for normal muscle functioning. So if both are not present, if glycolysis is not happening properly or fatty acid metabolism is not happening properly, there will be muscle weakness. So in this category of disorder, the weakness will be intermittent there'll be exercise intolerance, and liver can be involved because glycogen is involved in both muscle and liver metabolism. One specific lab test to diagnose this category of disorder will be a forearm exercise test. Another category of myopathy will be mitochondrial myopathy. Here, apart from myopathy, we will have other CNS findings like stroke, seizure, etc. That's called as encephalomyopathy. So CSF lactate will be a specific test here. Disorder of muscle excitability, the electrolyte imbalances which we know, hypokalemic paralysis, hyperkalemic paralysis, etc. This again will be intermittent. Here serum electrolyte levels will be used for diagnosis. Metabolic and endocrine myopathies, the most common endocrine being hypothyroidism, the most common metabolic being diabetes. Both can cause muscle weakness. Biopsy is used for diagnosis. Critical illness myopathy, any sick patient who's taking time to recover from ventilator or taking long time to get discharged will have critical illness myopathy. A nerve conduction study will be done in this case. Inflammatory myopathies, the dermatomyositis, polymyositis, and inclusion body myositis, and other inflammatory myositis like Scruptavius can cause myositis. Specific antibodies will be the diagnostic test. And toxic myopathies, atorvastatin-induced myopathy, or steroid-induced myopathy, etc. So these are total 8 causes of muscle weakness, which we are going to discuss shortly. So I told you, once we have characterized the weakness as acute or chronic muscle weakness, we'll have to find out what pattern of involvement is there. Identifying the pattern is very easy. Classify the weakness as either ocular involvement, facial and pharyngeal involvement, proximal muscle involvement, like that's called limb girdle weakness, or distal weakness. So these are specific tests, specific symptoms which the patient tells. I'll come again to that later. So again, the summary of the lab evaluation for any myopathy, we'll do serum CK level, urine myoglobin, endocrine studies, autoantibody test, forearm exercise test, EMG, muscle biopsy, and genetic studies. So CK level is the most sensitive marker of muscle damage. We know the 3 serotypes which are present, CK-MM, MB, and BB. CK-MM is highly sensitive for muscle damage. False positivity is seen in normal individuals, strenuous activity after a trauma, cramp, or seizure. The thing is, AST, ALT, LDH are also elevated in muscle disease. CK levels are not done routinely. So when we are interpreting an LFT, if there is elevated AST or ALT, we may mistake it to be for a liver disease. So not all elevated LFT is due to liver disease. It could be some muscle pathology also. So revisit the history, do a proper examination again, and look again. Serum GGT levels helps to distinguish the cause. GGT is normal in myopathy but elevated in liver disease. So another one basic differentiation is type 1 and type 2 muscle fiber. There are 2 types of muscle fibers. Type 1 muscle fiber is called slow twitch muscle fiber. It uses fatty acids for its metabolism. Slow sustained activity needs type 1 muscle fiber. Type 2 muscle fiber is fast twitch. It needs glucose for its metabolism and it's needed for rapid action. Any muscle consists of both type 1 and type 2 fibers, but a particular disease will involve either any one of these fibers. So the first test which we saw was creatine kinase level. Electromyography, it's a electrophysiological study of the muscle. 4 points should be noted while interpreting an EMG. One is muscle irritability, second is myotonia, CMAP is compound muscle action potential, MUAP is motor unit action potential. Any muscle disease, the muscle will be highly irritable. So when we are inserting the needle into the muscle, it will produce some impulse that is called as muscle irritability. So any inflammatory myopathy, dystrophy, toxic myopathy, or myotonic myopathy will produce muscle irritability, whereas some long-standing myopathies and metabolic myopathies, like in diabetes, thyroid, will not produce irritability. This is an important differentiation. Since the muscle itself is damaged, it cannot produce an action potential. So the compound muscle action potential is going to be reduced. Since the muscle is not producing an impulse, now the nerve has to fire more to make the muscle contract properly. That is called as motor unit action potential. So the motor unit action potential will fire early but at a normal rate. So EMG will be normal in a steroid or diffuse atrophy. EMG is recorded from a type 1 muscle fiber, whereas steroid or chronic atrophy will involve the type 2 muscle fibers, hence an EMG may be normal. NCS is also done along with an EMG. Naturally, an NCS has to be normal because the nerve conduction will be normal in a myopathy, but muscle action potential recorded from a NCS will be low. This is taken from Bradley. Just remember insertional activity, spontaneous activity, CMAP and MUAP. These are the 4 points which has to be differentiated. One important finding which can be made out from an EMG is called myotonia. Slow contraction followed by slow relaxation is called as myotonia. So these are the disorders. These are the myopathies associated with myotonia. Myotonic dystrophy type 1, type 2, myotonia congenita, paramyotonia congenita, hyperkalemic periodic paralysis, any potassium disorder for that sense, and acquired neuromyotonia. There's something called Isaac syndrome, stiff person syndrome. So coming to the third investigation, muscle biopsy, it's not done now routinely nowadays because inherited myopathies are now commonly diagnosed by genetic studies, but we can do this in terms of any acquired myopathy. Genetic studies are needed for any hereditary myopathy. So any chronic myopathy, I told it could be a persistent weakness, progressive weakness, or an intermittent weakness. So if you are having a persistent weakness, try to find out what muscle group is involved. As I already mentioned, most of the myopathies involve the girdles. That's called as proximal myopathy. Polymyositis, dermatomyositis, muscle dystrophies, metabolic toxic. So most of the myopathies have a proximal weakness. Some myopathies involve the ocular muscles. They are again mitochondrial myopathy, myotubular myopathy. Some specifically involve the facial and scapular muscles like facioscapulohumeral dystrophy. Some myopathies involve the distal muscle. That's a separate entity called as distal myopathy. I just mentioned only the 4 categories. They are common: proximal muscle, ophthalmoplegia, facial and scapular involvement, and distal muscles. So we'll see each category. The first category is hereditary muscle dystrophy. So the general characteristics for any hereditary muscle dystrophy will be they're hereditary, that is, they are inherited in some form, autosomal dominant, recessive, or X-linked. They are naturally progressive. They start from childhood till death. They have some unique phenotypic and genotypic features which help in clinical diagnosis and genetic diagnosis. All progressive hereditary myopathies will have cardiac and respiratory muscle involvement at some point of time. This is the common cause of death, and they have no specific treatment. So since they have no specific treatment, knowing this is of importance only for a theoretical purpose. So to learn about inherited myopathy, just a short glimpse about the muscle anatomy. Look at my pointer. This is the extracellular matrix. We know the extracellular matrix commonly consists of collagen and laminin. This is the muscle cell membrane or the sarcolemma, which consists of some proteins like dextroglycan, sarcoglycan, anoctamin, dysferlin, etc. The extracellular matrix is connected with the sarcolemma through a few proteins like the sarcospan, sarcoglycan, etc. And we know myosin and actin are needed for muscle contraction. The sarcolemma and myosin are connected by a big protein called as dystrophin, and another small protein called as myofibrillin. So remember the 4 categories. Extracellular matrix consists of collagen and laminin. Sarcolemma consists of anoctamin, dysferlin, etc. These two are connected by sarcoglycan. The myosin and sarcolemma are connected by either dystrophin or myofibrillar myopathy. Any of these proteins may be abnormal. For example, assume if dystrophin is not produced, the muscle will be weak because the myosin is not getting connected to the sarcolemma, so the muscle will go for lysis. CK levels will be elevated, patient will have weakness. Similarly, there's one entity called as limb-girdle muscle dystrophy. Any protein of the sarcolemma, be it dextroglycan, anoctamin, myotillin, etc., will cause limb-girdle muscle dystrophy, like that. So there are 6 categories of hereditary myopathies. The one category is Duchenne and Becker's muscle dystrophy. They are called as dystrophinopathies. I'm going fast now. X-linked recessive disorder they are. So they commonly affect males. The pathology is absent dystrophin or reduced level or size of dystrophin. Dystrophin is a large protein. So when this protein is gone, large muscles get affected. So proximal muscles of lower extremities are commonly affected. We have climbing difficulties. One clinical feature here will be calf hypertrophy. The cause of death will be cardiac involvement more than respiratory muscle involvement. This is one cause of treatable hereditary myopathy. The treatment available are steroids, supportive care. And since now we know that dystrophin gene is involved and there's a mutation affecting this, which reduces the production of dystrophin, we can add some oligonucleotides to the existing gene so that this protein can be produced. That's called short oligonucleotide insertion therapy. Limb-girdle muscle dystrophy, it's again a big category of disorders. It's of two types, limb-girdle muscle dystrophy type 1 or type 2. LGMD type 1 is autosomal dominantly inherited. LGMD 2 is autosomal recessively inherited. This occurs in first to fourth decade of life. Males and females are equally affected. As the name suggests, the girdles are affected, both pelvic girdles and shoulder girdles. Here, respiratory insufficiency will be more than cardiomyopathy, which will be the cause of death. So there are many types of LGMD, around 12 types. Harrison mentions 3 as important. One is LGMD type 2A. It is called as calpainopathy. Remember, I pointed calpain in the diagram. So if this is lost, there will be scapular winging without calf hypertrophy. There will be no longer cardiac involvement in this type, common in France, Italy, Spain, and Britain. LGMD type 2I is called Ficutin-related protein deficiency. This type is associated with calf muscle hypertrophy with the lung and cardiac involvement. So LGMD2I is similar to Duchenne's muscle dystrophy. LGMD2L is called anactominopathy, where there will be medial calf hypertrophy. So the third one is Emery-Dreifuss muscle dystrophy. We had a patient 2 weeks back. It's an X-linked myopathy due to Emerin mutation or FHL1 mutation. So it commonly affects male. Autosomally dominant forms are also available where the mutation will be laminin A or C. Remember, laminin is present in the extracellular matrix. Other proteins are Nesprin1, Nesprin2, TMEM43. So the classical clinical clue here will be contractures preceding the muscle weakness. Contractures affecting elbows, ankle, and neck. Again, cardiomyopathy will be the cause of death, and any arrhythmia like atrial fibrillation, AV block, cardioembolic stroke will be there. All these 3 were present in that patient, which we had previously. Treatment is supportive. Myotonic dystrophy, again the fourth type of inherited myopathy. It's of 2 types, type 1 and type 2. As the name suggests, it's the only inherited myopathy which presents with myotonia. DM1, there will be distal muscle weakness, wrist, finger, and foot drop. We have the classical hatchet phases due to temporalis muscle involvement. There will be frontal baldness, dysphagia and dysarthria, myotonia I told you. The cause of death here will be ventilator insufficiency. Second followed by conduction abnormalities. Abnormal esophageal and colonic motility may be present. Apart from muscle involvement, the patient can have posterior subcapsular cataract, gonadal atrophy, insulin resistance, etc. We have congenital form. Whereas type 2 myotonic dystrophy is called proximal myotonic myopathy. I told you DM1, there will be distal muscle weakness. DM2, there will be proximal muscle weakness. So just a few differences. Similar to type 1, but proximal muscle involvement is more common. And cardiac involvement is less common. Congenital form is absent. Hatchet phases are absent. So these 4 features are absent, but the other myotonia will be present. Colonic motility disorders and esophageal motility disorders will be present. Both are autosomally dominant inherited. The pathology here will be a trinucleotide repeat sequence, like some types of spinocerebellar ataxia. Like any trinucleotide repeat sequence, anticipation phenomenon occurs here. Treatment, remember, for any myotonic disorder, mexiletine is a treatment. It's used for muscle relaxation, foot orthosis, BiPAP support for ventilatory failure, modafinil, cardiac pacemaker, and cardioverter defibrillator are used for treatment. The fifth type of inherited myopathy will be FC, facioscapulohumeral muscle dystrophy. Again, it's of 2 types, type 1 and type 2. As the name suggests, facial muscle weakness, inability to smile, whistle, and close the eyes. Scapular weakness, scapular winging. Humeral muscle weakness, biceps and triceps involvement with deltoid sparing. Since the deltoid is spared, we have something called as Papoi sign here. Ventilatory muscle weakness occurs in 5%. Apart from this, we'll have nerve deafness and Coats disease. Mutation here will be 4q33 deletion, leading to hypomethylation. Again, supportive care is the treatment. OPMD is oculopharyngeal muscle dystrophy. This is common in older age, autosomally dominant. Name suggests we'll have ocular weakness with the pharyngeal muscle weakness. Remember, most of the neuromuscular junction disorder, the initial manifestation will be external ophthalmoplegia or ptosis. So similar, but it's a disease of younger age. So any older patient coming with external ophthalmoplegia, it could be myasthenia gravis again, but it could also be OPMD. Here the mutation will be PABP2 gene expansion. So treatment will be eyelid crutches, cricopharyngeal myotomy, and ptosis surgery. So the last category of inherited myopathy will be distal myopathy. Just a few names. Autosomally dominant, it could be Wielander, Lloyd, Markusberg, Griggs. Autosomally recessive, it will be GNE myopathy or Miyoshi myopathy. X-linked will be Williams myopathy. So rather than involving the proximal muscles, it will cause progressive involvement of the distal muscles. So there'll be foot drops, wrist drops will be the common manifestation. Commonly occur after autosomal dominant disorders occur after 40 years. Recessive myopathies occur less than 20 years. Again, treatment is mainly supportive. So summarizing all the 6 types of hereditary myopathy. So Duchenne muscle dystrophy or Becker's muscle dystrophy, they are dystrophinopathies. CK is elevated here because they are large muscles. The muscle is not getting connected to the myosin, so it goes for lysis. So we'll have CK elevation. EMG will show myopathic picture. Biopsy will show dystrophic features. LGMD, the CK will be slightly elevated. Again, EMG is myopathic. Biopsy will show dystrophic features. I told Emerin mutation occurs in LGMD. So absent Emerin staining of myonuclei is one important feature here. Myotonic dystrophy, I told it is the only inherited myopathy which produces myotonia in EMG. So we'll have myotonia in EMG. Otherwise, the things are same. CK may be normal or mildly elevated. Biopsy here will show numerous internalized nuclei in muscle fibers. If you remember the pathology, I told myotonic dystrophy is due to increased CTG repeats. So one abnormal protein is getting increased in the body, which is manifested in biopsy as internalized nuclei, or we'll have vacuoles within the nuclei. FSHD, again, CK is mildly elevated. It shows myopathic picture. It is commonly mistaken in biopsy as an inflammatory myopathy because of the inflammatory infiltrate. So 4. 5 is OPMD. Commonly occurs in older age, I told you. CK is elevated, myopathic picture. Here also we'll get tubular filaments in biopsy. And the last category, together of distal myopathies, CK is markedly elevated here. So of all the myopathies, only Duchenne's muscle dystrophy or dystrophinopathies and distal myopathies are the 2 inherited myopathies where less CK elevation. All other disorders, CK may be normal or mildly elevated. Okay, so we finished one category, inherited myopathy, or the category producing progressive weakness. Coming to intermittent weakness, need not read everything. If there is an intermittent weakness, one disorder which we commonly know is it could be a neuromuscular junction disorder like myasthenia gravis. Among myopathy, we have 2 disorders. It could be either a hypokalemic or hyperkalemic periodic paralysis, this category, or it could be a muscle glycolytic or fatty acid metabolism disorder. So we have 2 disorders of myopathy which produces intermittent muscle weakness. The important differential diagnosis is a neuromuscular junction disorder, which is myasthenia gravis. So we'll see one category of among these, disorder of muscle energy metabolism. I told type 1 fibers mainly uses glucose for its metabolism. Type 2 fibers mainly uses fatty acids for its metabolism. So if there is a problem in either glycogen or glucose pathway or fatty acid metabolism pathway, the muscle cannot utilize the energy. So the muscle will go for lysis. In this case, CK will be elevated and lysis will be so extensive that myoglobin also will be elevated. So this again can be acute or chronic. So first we will see the glycolytic disorders of muscle. We know very well there are 9 types of glucose metabolism disorders. Only 3 involve the muscle commonly. The most common being alpha glucosidase deficiency or acid maltase deficiency. 3 forms are present: infantile, childhood, and adult form. Infantile form is more severe enough to cause death by 1.5 years of age. It presents with muscle weakness, cardiomegaly, hepatomegaly, and respiratory insufficiency. Remember, any glucose metabolism disorder will involve 2 organs mainly. One is the liver and the other is the muscle, because these are the 2 organs where glycogen is getting deposited. So if this is not metabolized properly, these are the 2 organs going to be involved. Muscle is problematic, the muscle will go for lysis, we'll have myoglobinuria. If the liver is problematic, glycogen will get deposited there. We'll have hepatomegaly. Since glycogen is not getting released, we'll have hypoglycemia. This is common for any glucose metabolism disorder. So childhood form, it resembles Duchenne's muscle dystrophy, but your brain and liver are unaffected. It's a pure muscular form. Adult form occurs in 3rd to 4th decade. Ventilatory weakness is the initial manifestation. Very often we'll have patients who directly come into the emergency room with a ventilatory muscle weakness without any obvious cause. This could be one reason. So investigations, as we all know, same thing: CK, EMG, and biopsy. CK will be elevated in infantile form, but with adult form, it may be normal. EMG shows irritability common to any muscle disorder. Biopsy, since the glycogen is not getting metabolized, glycogen is stored within vacuoles in the cell. In biopsy, we'll see it as vacuoles. And genetic studies for specific diagnosis, all are autosomal recessive. Remember, any enzyme deficiency in our body will be autosomally recessive. So treatment, since the enzyme is problematic, we have a specific enzyme replacement therapy with recombinant alpha glucosidase. This is one among the few disorders where enzyme replacement is available, alpha glucosidase deficiency. So other minor defects will be debranching enzyme deficiency, the same problem of glycogen metabolism. Here we have hypotonia due to muscle involvement, delayed motor milestones again due to muscle involvement, hepatomegaly due to glycogen deposition in liver, growth retardation and hypoglycemia, what I mentioned previously. Similar to this branching enzyme deficiency, failure to thrive, hepatomegaly, muscle wasting and hypotonia. So remember, any intermittent weakness with the hepatomegaly, think of a disorder of muscle metabolism of the glycolytic type. Another one named disease is McArdle's disease caused by myophosphorylase deficiency. It's a type 5 glycolytic pathway deficiency. This begins in adolescence. Myoglobinuria is common. Again, the symptom will be exercise intolerance. But the thing is, McArdle's disease is a pure muscle form. Your liver involvement will not be there. So an adolescent patient who comes to you and tells you, I couldn't exercise. If I exercise, I have muscle pain. It could be McArdle's disease. So you may think I'm talking too much of theory, just a small clinical thing. I told you type 1 muscle fibers mainly uses fatty acids and type 2 mainly uses glucose. But for any muscle fiber, the muscle metabolism switches from glucose initially to fatty acids later. So whatever be the muscle type, initially it uses glucose. In the later phase, it uses fatty acids. So when you are using any muscle for a longer time, like a marathon race or something, or you're standing for a longer time, your type 1 muscle fibers get activated and they start using fatty acids. So any glycolytic pathway defect will cause muscle weakness initially, but once the metabolism switches from glycolytic to fatty acid pathway, the muscle power will start increasing. This is called a second wind phenomenon. So McArdle's disease, being a glycolytic disease, will have a second wind phenomenon. This is a classical clinical point to note. So again, the clinical advice, the therapeutic advice which you give is also based on this only. Initially, he will have weakness, but later he may not have weakness. So ask him to start any activity slowly with a warm-up so that the muscle metabolism changes from type 2 to type 1 or from glucose to fatty acid metabolism to overcome the weakness. That is why we need to know the entire physiology biochemistry to learn about sports physiology. Only if you know type 1, type 2, only if you know glucose and fatty acid, we can advise the patient about McArdle's disease. And since it's a glycolytic pathway, give glucose or fructose prior to exercise so that metabolism will be good. So we finished glycolytic pathway defects among metabolic disorders. The second being carnitine palmitoyl transferase 2 deficiency. We know very well it's a fatty acid transport protein. This occurs in younger age. Since most of the muscles involve fatty acid for its metabolism, this will be more severe than the first category. So pain and myoglobinuria occur after prolonged exercise. This is what I was mentioning. It doesn't occur early, it occurs late. Treatment here being high carbohydrate because muscle cannot use fatty acid. So we have to give more carbohydrate to make the muscle contract. So high carbohydrate, low fat diet has been tried, but with very less significant clinical improvement. One specific clinical test for this category of disorders, muscle energy metabolism, will be a forearm exercise test. Because exercise intolerance is the clinical picture here. Ask the patient to exercise. Especially we are asking him to do an exercise with the forearm. We measure a baseline lactic acid and ammonia. The exercise is opening and closing the wrist for 1 minute. We draw samples of blood after 1, 2, 4, 6 and 10 minutes. Normally what happens after any exercise, serum lactate has to rise, ammonia has to rise. Why lactate is rising? Because muscle uses glucose. The end of any glucose metabolism, anaerobic metabolism will be lactate. So lactate should increase. Protein starts degrading, so ammonia should rise. But in a glycolytic disorder, obviously lactate cannot rise. So rise of ammonia without a rise of lactate in a intermittent myoglobinuria or intermittent weakness with exercise intolerance, it is a glycolytic disorder. Whereas the same history with a normal lactate, normal ammonia, it's a fatty acid disorder. Okay, so we finished 2 categories now. Third category of myopathy, mitochondrial myopathy. The slide we have been reading from second year of pathology. Mitochondrial DNA will be a double-stranded DNA, circular DNA. It has 16,569 base pairs, 22 tRNAs and 2 rRNAs. 13 polypeptides or respiratory chain are produced from mitochondria. And any mitochondrial inheritance will be maternally inherited. This thing we know. But mitochondrial myopathy, what to know? It presents with 3 patterns. Chronic progressive external ophthalmoplegia. So predominant eye muscle involvement is one factor. Next thing is skeletal muscle and CNS syndrome. The one thing which I mentioned as encephalomyopathy. So any myopathy with any CNS manifestation, think of mitochondrial myopathy. Third is pure myopathy. So commonly we have CPEO pattern or an encephalomyopathy pattern. CPEO, the one common example is Kearns-Sayre syndrome. Last year we had one patient less than 20 years of age with myopathy and short stature. Probably you could have had Kearns-Sayre syndrome. So the triad is age less than 20 years, chronic progressive external ophthalmoplegia and pigmentary retinopathy. The other features will be common to any myopathy, complete dot block, CSF protein more than 100 milligram per deciliter, the encephalomyopathy I told you, and cerebellar ataxia. The other features will be gonadal dysfunction, short stature, thyroid disease, hypoparathyroidism, hyperaldosteronism, and diabetes. You not read everything. Remember, diabetes, hypothyroid, hypoparathyroid, hyperaldosteronism, they itself can cause myopathy. So while evaluating a less than 20 years say old patient with myopathy, and you have all causes present like hypothyroidism, hypoparathyroidism, think in terms of Kearns-Sayre syndrome. So again, CK slightly elevated, EMG is myopathic, NCS may be abnormal due to neuropathy. The biopsy of any mitochondrial disorder will show RAG red fibers and COX negative fibers. One common terminology, please remember it. And it's not an inherited disorder. Most commonly it is a sporadic disorder. Treatment will be a prophylactic pacemaker implantation because they present before 20 years of age. We know they are going to develop cardiomyopathy in future. So a prophylactic pacemaker implant may help. So among mitochondrial myopathies, the first category was Kearns-Sayre. The second one is progressive external ophthalmoplegia. So external ophthalmoplegia less than 20 years, think of Kearns-Sayre syndrome. More than 20 years, that is after puberty, think of PO itself. Again, they may present with exercise intolerance, ophthalmoplegia, other neck muscle weaknesses. It occurs in 2 forms. AD form includes ANT1 gene, C100 ORF, POLG1 gene. ER form also includes the same gene. The third type of mitochondrial myopathy will be MERRF, myoclonic epilepsy, cerebellar ataxia, RAG red fibers. Here we have cerebellar ataxia and myoclonic epilepsy. Neuropathy dementia may occur. A8334G substitution of tRNA is the mutation here. Just remember one point. Any patient with cerebral epilepsy and cerebellar ataxia, there's no point in linking an epilepsy with cerebellar ataxia. But if a patient is having epilepsy with cerebellar ataxia, look for myopathy because he may have MUF. Similarly, MELAS, mitochondrial myopathy, encephalopathy, lactic acidosis, and stroke-like episodes. It commonly occurs less than 20 years. So any young age stroke, the stroke again, it doesn't follow the usual territory. So MELAS is the most common mitochondrial encephalomyopathy, occurs less than 20 years. Seizure is again the first manifestation. It presents like young stroke. Apart from this, it presents with hearing loss, diabetes, hypothalamic dysfunction, hypothyroidism, absent secondary sexual characters. Again, this patient presents with all possible causes of myopathy during investigation. With the seizures and young stroke, always do a CSF to look for elevated serum lactate and CSF lactate. He could have MELAS. Imaging also here shows basal ganglia calcification, occipital and parietal infarction, but it does not respect the routine vascular territories. So any stroke in young, which of the infarction pattern, which is not following the routine thing, do a CSF, he could turn out to be MELAS. And disorder is mitochondrial DNA deletion syndrome. Not going into details. So we finished 3 categories till now: inherited myopathies, disorder of muscle energy metabolism, and mitochondrial myopathy. Another important category is muscle membrane excitability. What is needed for muscle membrane excitability? All the channels: calcium, sodium, potassium, etc. So all disorders of muscle membrane excitability will present with episodic muscle weakness. We have myotonia and paramyotonia, all are channelopathies. So when we talk about episodic muscle weakness due to muscle membrane excitability, what comes into our mind directly is hypokalemic periodic paralysis. But remember, hypokalemic periodic paralysis is a disorder of calcium channel, not a potassium channel. The common disorder here is hypokalemic periodic paralysis. It's an autosomally dominant inherited disease, common in adolescence. Remember, any onset of intermittent weakness beyond 25 years of age, it cannot be hypokalemic periodic paralysis. Males are commonly affected. The pathology here is any high carbohydrate meal or exercise. Remember, anything which stimulates insulin. High carbohydrate meal will stimulate insulin. Exercise will stimulate insulin. High potassium diet will stimulate insulin. Anything which stimulates insulin will cause this weakness, but the mechanism is not extensively studied. Ocular, bulbar, and respiratory muscle sparing is present. So the patient will not go in for respiratory failure here. It commonly resolves after 24 hours, as the name suggests. It's only a periodic paralysis. But the cause of death will be a cardiac arrhythmias due to hypokalemia as such. Thyrotoxic periodic paralysis resembles this disease. So investigations again, any patient coming with intermittent muscle disorder without a history of exercise, always think in terms of channelopathies. We'll do a serum potassium level. We'll have low serum potassium when all cause of hypokalemia are ruled out. NCS will show decreased muscle amplitude and decremental response following exercise. The reason is obvious. EMG will be normal here. Again, there are two types. Type 1 is due to calcium channel mutation, CalCL1A3 mutation. Type 2 is due to SCN4A mutation. Treatment, it resolves within 24 hours, so there's no need for treatment. But if the patient is really sick, to avoid cardiac arrhythmias, we can give potassium administration or orally or IV. And how to give a prophylaxis. I told high carbohydrate meal is going to precipitate. So a low carbohydrate, low sodium, low exercise, low volume loss. Volume loss will stimulate aldosterone, which further will cause hypokalemia. Prophylaxis is given with acetazolamide or dichlorphenamide in type 1, but in type 2, we don't have any prophylaxis. Remember, acetazolamide is a magic drug in CNS. Most of the inherited diseases, be it SCA type 1, type 2, many types of SCA, many types of myopathy, many unknown disorders of CNS will respond to acetazolamide. So acetazolamide is a magic drug in CNS. Okay, so if we finish the calcium channel disorder, which is hypokalemic periodic paralysis. Similarly, hyperkalemic periodic paralysis is a disorder of sodium channel. Again, it's not a potassium channel disorder. It's a misnomer actually, because administering potassium precipitates the disease. There need not be an elevated potassium level. Common in first decade, males and females are equally affected. It lasts for 30 minutes. The precipitating factors are opposite to that of hypokalemic periodic paralysis. Rest will precipitate hyperkalemic paralysis. Fasting will precipitate hyperkalemic paralysis, whereas the opposite, an exercise or a high carbohydrate diet will precipitate hypokalemic periodic paralysis. The findings are same, decreased amplitude in NCS and silent EMG. Again, prophylaxis is with acetazolamide and dichlorphenamide. Another disorder of sodium channel is paramyotonia congenita. Paramyotonia means paradoxical myotonia. I told you myotonia is a slow contraction followed by a slow relaxation, which is induced spontaneously or by an action. If the rest itself is stimulating paramyotonia, it is called as paramyotonia. That's all. That is a myotonia. Normal myotonia will improve with muscle activity, but paradoxical myotonia will worsen with muscle activity. So again, we'll have myotonia in EMG. CK will be elevated. Cold stimulation will show decreased potential. Any myotonia will have mexiletine as the treatment. So comparing hypokalemic and hyperkalemic periodic paralysis. Hypokalemic paralysis is a calcium channel disorder. Hyperkalemic paralysis is a sodium channel disorder. Hypokalemic paralysis commonly affects males. Hyperkalemic paralysis, both are equally affected. High carbohydrate, high sodium, high exercise will stimulate hypokalemia. Rest and fasting will precipitate hyperkalemic paralysis. For both these disorders, ocular, bulbar, and respiratory muscles are spared. Arrhythmia is the common cause of death in both. Hypokalemia will take 24 hours to resolve, whereas hyperkalemic paralysis take 30 minutes to resolve. Both show the similar NCS features. That is, an exercise will show a decremental response, but EMG will be silent or normal. I told you hypokalemic periodic paralysis is a calcium channel disorder. Hyperkalemic periodic paralysis is a sodium channel disorder. But what is actually a potassium channel disorder? We have something called as Anderson-Travel syndrome. And it's due to mutation of KR21 gene. Again, acetazolamide is used as the prophylaxis here. Since it involves potassium, cardiac arrhythmias, episodic weakness, and will have dysmorphic features also. Cardiac arrhythmias are the common cause of death. Chloride channel disorder, just remember two names. Autosomal dominant, we have Thomson disease. Here we have Becker's disease. So in myopathy, remember two Beckers. One is Becker's muscle dystrophy, which is a dystrophinopathy, and Becker's disease, which is a chloride channel myopathy. I'll skip the others. Okay, so 4 categories over. Now coming to endocrine and metabolic myopathy. For both these categories, asthenia, I told you the pseudo-paralysis, remember? So pseudo-paralysis is more common than a true weakness here, but a weakness can occur. In all these disorders, creatine kinase will be normal, except in hypothyroidism where CK will be elevated. It is one of the treatable myopathies. So till now I mentioned only a few treatable myopathies. One is alpha glucosidase deficiency, the channelopathies, hypokalemic and hyperkalemic, and third is endocrine and metabolic myopathies. These are the three treatable myopathies. So comparing hypo and hyperthyroidism causing myopathy. Hypothyroidism is usually a proximal weakness, like any other myopathy. We know the pseudomyotonic reflex very well as slow contraction followed by slow relaxation with an elevated CK level. Hyperthyroidism, again, it will be a proximal weakness, but there won't be any cramps, pain, or stiffness. Fasciculations will be present with enhanced DTR. Remember the first slide I showed you? Fasciculation with enhanced deep tendon reflexes also occurs in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. This is due to KR2.6 mutation, and I told you hyperthyroidism or a thyrotoxic periodic paralysis resembles that of a hypokalemic periodic paralysis. This is the mechanism shown. Similar to hypokalemic periodic paralysis, elevated levels of thyroxine is going to stimulate your insulin, which is causing entry of more potassium. When more positive ions enter into the cell, it causes depolarization. Depolarization causes muscle contraction, but relaxation does not occur. So further, there will be weakness. Again, hyperparathyroidism and hypoparathyroidism are also cause of muscle weakness. Hypoparathyroidism, there will be hypocalcemia and tetany. That will be a cause of weakness here. Coming to adrenal disorders, steroid myopathy. Commonly we know steroid myopathy is the most common endocrine myopathy here. Again, proximal muscle weakness with Cushingoid appearance will be present. Already I mentioned earlier, CK and EMG will be normal here. Similarly, biopsy will be normal because an endocrine myopathy will involve type 2 fiber muscle fiber. So EMG will be normal because an EMG is recorded from type 1 muscle fiber. So Cushing syndrome will cause myopathy. Similarly, hyperaldosteronism will cause myopathy because of hypokalemia as such. Acromegaly will also cause weakness. So among endocrine myopathies, hypo and hyperthyroidism, hypo and hyperparathyroidism, Cushing syndrome, hyperaldosteronism, pituitary disorder will cause. Metabolic, the most common metabolic disease being diabetes mellitus. We know very well diabetes mellitus will cause neuropathy commonly. Myopathy is as such common. The myopathy which occurs here is the vessels are so severely affected that the blood supply to the muscle is gone. The muscle goes for an ischemic infarction. Now the patient goes for muscle pain and muscle weakness. That's called diabetic myonecrosis. That is the myopathy which occurs in diabetes. It's not a pure myopathy as such. So the biopsy is contraindicated because a biopsy will cause bleeding into the muscle in this condition. So CT and MRI is used for diagnosis where we have myonecrosis. Okay, so critical illness myopathy, I told you, any patient who is in ventilator, we have a difficulty in weaning from the ventilator, think of critical illness myopathy. Toxic myopathy, practically any drug can cause. Commonly, all lipid lowering agents will cause myopathy. So statin, fibrate, niacin, ezetimibe will cause it. It causes raised CK, myocyte irritability, and necrotic muscle fibers, common for any myopathy. Treatment is stop the drug if CK elevates 3 to 5 times the normal. Patient is having severe muscle pain, severe weakness, and myoglobinuria. If stopping the drug does not reverse the condition, go for steroids and immunotherapy. The basis of immunotherapy is it is said that statins can induce an immune response which is going to damage the muscle. So immunotherapy is needed. Remember, yes, steroid itself can cause myopathy. Okay, so the other categories, other drug-induced myopathy will be a glucocorticoid-related myopathy. It can occur in acute or chronic form. The drugs will be betamethasone, dexamethasone, triamcinolone. That is prednisolone and hydrocortisone commonly do not cause myopathy. Only beta and dexamethasone will cause. So it can occur in chronic or acute form. Chronic form, like any chronic myopathy, CK, EMG and type 2 fiber atrophy will be there. Everything will be normal. And acute presentation is called as acute quadriplegic myopathy. In COPD, bronchial asthma, or transplantation where we give high dose of IV steroids, the patient can present with myopathy. That's an acute myopathy. COPD, bronchial asthma, transplantation, sepsis, again the patient will be critically ill. So they itself will cause critical illness myopathy. So one factor contributing to critical illness myopathy will be, one is the disease as such. The second, the steroids which are giving to the patient. So the presentation for both will be the similar, difficulty in weaning from the ventilator. A critical illness myopathy will typically cause reduced muscle action potential with preserved sensory nerve action potential. I remember I told in the first table, critical illness myopathy is diagnosed by an NCS. Any patient who has difficulty in weaning from ventilator, do an NCS because it could be a critical illness myopathy. Pathologies, there will be loss of myosin. Treatment is stop steroids and give physiotherapy. These are the other drugs which cause myopathy. So remember, if you have to remember 2 drugs, think of all lipid lowering agents and fluorinated steroids, dexamethasone and betamethasone. Apart from this, non-depolarizing muscle blockers, zidovudine, which is given ART. Alcohol can cause myopathy. And autoimmune myopathy, the common drug again is statin, which I told you, for which we give steroids, colchicine, amiodarone, etc. So we finished one major category. I didn't mention about inflammatory myopathies here. So other muscle complaints, pain. Pain is called as myalgia. It can occur in myositis, like inflammatory myositis or any infective myositis. And 2 other disorders which we commonly confuse, fibromyalgia and polymyalgia rheumatica. Fibromyalgia is a myofascial pain syndrome. The reason is not known. Patient will have muscle tenderness, probably considered to be psychiatric. Polymyalgia rheumatica, it's a muscle pain occurring in the background of a rheumatological disease like a vasculitis. Muscle cramps are common in neurogenic disorders than in myogenic disorders. Contracture, remember, contracture can be a temporary contracture or a fixed contracture. Glycolytic disorders can cause contracture. A fixed contracture, remember, Emery-Dreifuss myopathy presents with muscle weakness with the contracture. And you know the difference between myotonia versus paradoxical myotonia. Muscle stiffness, remember, stiff person syndrome, which is produced by anti-GAD antibody, and that's one condition called as acquired neuromyotonia. It's called Isaac syndrome. And hypertrophy versus pseudohypertrophy versus atrophy. Previously in Duchenne's muscle dystrophy, we used to call as calf pseudohypertrophy, but now they are considering it is a true hypertrophy. If the muscle mass is increasing, it's called hypertrophy. If the muscle is replaced with fibrofatty tissue, it is called as pseudohypertrophy. Muscle mass is reducing, it's called as an atrophy. So last, one of the acute muscle disorder, which is rhabdomyolysis. Always we have one term lingering in our mind, rhabdomyolysis. A rapid destruction of striated muscle fibers is called rhabdomyolysis. It can occur in these diseases: acute inflammatory myopathy, disorder of muscle energy metabolism, mainly glycolytic pathway, poisons, snake bite, or any poison for that matter, any drug, mainly it's statins, crush injuries, diabetes, I told you, diabetic myonecrosis, or other conditions like status epilepticus, tetanus, neuroleptic malignant syndrome, malignant hypothermia. Any condition causing excess muscle activation will cause this rapid destruction of striated muscle fibers, that's releasing more amount of CK into the blood, more amount of myoglobin into the blood. That's the investigation. Rapidly, markedly elevated CK and myoglobinuria. Understanding this is important because excess myoglobin will deposit in the kidney and will cause pigment deposition, AKI. The catch here is identify rhabdomyolysis before the patient develops AKI, because before AKI, there's a specific treatment called as diuresis or forced alkaline diuresis. Hydration is going to prevent AKI, but once the patient with rhabdomyolysis has developed AKI, there's no other treatment. It is the patient will have a poor prognosis later. Only dialysis can be indicated. So summarizing everything, we have 8 categories of myopathies. There are 6 inherited myopathies. Each will have a specific clinical feature to point to a diagnosis. Happy New Year.